Yes,
All right.
greetings. Obadele, Kambon.
Yes, greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you good.
Yes, we hear you
Okay.
very
Good.
well.
Wonderful.
How you doing
Yeah, so
tonight? How's the family?
I'm doing well. The family is well. We're pleased to be all doing well. Just yesterday, there was a major explosion of a gas filling station and a tanker that we saw from our place. It looked like a mushroom cloud. If you ever seen an atomic bomb go off, it looked like that. So, um, it really, when you see things like that, puts things in perspective. So, we're glad to all be doing well and be here.
Mhm. And it's a pleasure having you because for 2 years ago, I saw you on a YouTube and you was doing an interview, and you were talking about homeschooling and where you're from and things like that. And I was like, okay, I need to get in contact with this brother because he'll do us some justice here in Florida, And
Right.
just a month ago, Yoga Basu named Mikey Kwaku, he said, "Oh, I think you need to try and get the brethren blah 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 to be a part of the tour." And I'm like, "Okay, well send me his information." He said he lives in Ghana though, so just look him up. He works at the University of Ghana. So I looked you up. Then I went on YouTube. I said, I've been looking for him for 2 years now. Okay, well we definitely got to get in touch. So you coming on the radio was definitely a plus for us. Please believe that, definitely a plus. And
Beautiful.
the energy just went from there. He was like, I think you should get in contact with him since he talks about Kemet and he connects the languages, the Akan language and other different dialects of languages within Ghana and can relate them to the Kemetic language and stuff. So I'm like, really? In Ghana? That's really odd to hear. And he was like, yeah, he really goes deep into it. So that really, I guess I would say, touched my heart because not everybody's spiritual eyes and ears are open to that type of concept because it's always been
Right.
told about paganism or devil worshiping is evil, and the Bible has a way of twisting your mind to make you look at Kemet as something, bad, for lack of a
Right.
better word. And then you come,
Yeah.
and other ones before you and during you and after you are coming with these facts and these truths. And a lot of people's spiritual ears and eyes are not really open, so they close down. They like being closed up. Religion to keep them closed up. And sometimes that's what it be. Because religion got us
Right.
so messed up that we can't open up to the knowledge you dropping.
Right. Right. Yeah. Let me start off. Some of the work that I do connecting contemporary African languages to Medu Neter, to our ancient classical language. That I'm, of course, not the first one to do this. One of the luminaries is actually a teacher of my teacher. This is Professor Theophile Obenga. And he has a book for anyone who is interested. It's called Origine commune de l'Égyptien ancien du Coq et des langues négro-africaines mondiales. So it's, of course, in French. It's a very powerful text, what it does. And even if you don't read French, you can get a lot from it. Because what he does is he actually shows the word in Medu Neter, then he shows it in Coptic, then he shows it in various African languages from throughout the continent. And just yesterday, there was a conference. The conference was entitled Wahim Mesut Medu Neter, which is the repetition of the birth of Medu Neter. And the thrust of the conference was looking at ways to revitalize a language in terms of making it a language that we speak on a day-to-day basis, a language that we write on a day-to-day basis, that we read on a day-to-day basis. So you have people from various backgrounds. I presented, and my presentation was actually on the teaching of Medu Neter using indigenous African languages. So the idea is, anytime we talk about Medu Neter or African liberation or anything of that nature, we always have these conversations in English or in French or in Portuguese, what have you. And, the majority of African people do not speak these languages. So even in Ghana, which is supposed to be an English-speaking country, the constant lamentation is that very few people have access to the political structure because very few people have any degree of mastery whatsoever of the English language. And those who are in power like it that way, that if they're talking in Parliament about, oh, we're going to spend, these millions for this and these millions for that, no one can really check them because, the people aren't speaking English. And, the ideological part of it was, why do we have to go and get colonized in order to listen to the voice of our ancestors? So people who just speak Chi or just speak Yoruba or just speak Wolof or just speak Kikongo or whatever, because all of the scholarship tends to be in these Eurasian languages, it's basically like telling them, okay, you have to go get colonized before you can get decolonized. And it really just doesn't make sense. It's like taking a very convoluted path through Europe when you just want to go from Ghana to Nigeria. And it's like, why would I have to take a stopover in Amsterdam somewhere, in London somewhere, when I just want to go someplace that's just a few miles away? By the same token, why do we have to take a side trip to London and to Paris and to Berlin when we just want to go straight back from where our ancestors came from, that Nile Valley and, between. So, I thought it was a very timely presentation. I gave the whole presentation in Chi, and then I translated it myself into English, Chi being one of the major languages of Ghana. And then again, just to live it out, if we're saying we need to be doing scholarship in African languages, well, let's do the scholarship. Let's do the presentation in African languages.
Oh, yes. And how did you come to those conclusions with the African language being related to the Meduneta?
Say that one more time. Your line wasn't clear right there.
Yes, I was saying, so through the Meduneta, you were able to decipher the vocabularies and languages connecting with Kemet.
Yeah, so there are actually quite a few people who deal with translations of Meduneta. Matter of fact, I'm part of a group called Shemsu Bak, and we have several books. I'm the newest member of the group, but several of the books that have already come out, including Sanhat, which is a translation of a 4,000-year-old text in Meduneta about a man who he is with Senwosret at the time where Senwosret's father, Amenemhat, was assassinated. And because he felt like, this is a palace coup, things could go wrong, he decided to escape and abscond from his military service and go into southwestern Eurasia, where he had all types of adventures. He had to, kill this champion who tried to challenge him, so forth and so on. Then eventually he sent a letter back to the ruler, who was the one who he served under, Senwosret, and, asked for permission to return because he, basically deserted, left without permission. But, he was like, he doesn't want to die in this foreign land. And he got the word back that, you won't have to be covered in ram skin, like how the Eurasians do. You can come back to Kemet and get a fitting burial. So when he came back, they clothed him in linen, all these fine oils, so forth and so on. And, it was basically a very happy ending. And it's interesting, in the book Intellectual Warfare by the late Dr. Jacob Carruthers, he uses that metaphor as what we all need to do in terms of re-Africanization. That letter that Sanhat got, where, it was said, come back to the land of black people, come back to Kemet, and this is what we need to do. We need to come back to our land, come back to our place, so that we're not, dying in these very white places that many of us tend to happen to find ourselves in. So that's one text. Another text that's already come out is Smi En Sechetipen, which is a story of the peasant. It's often referred to in translation as the eloquent peasant, and it's about a man who makes several petitions. First, he's done wrong, that there's a man who swindles him out of his donkeys and his possessions by getting him to get the donkeys off the path. They eat an ear of corn, and then he beats the guy up, takes his things. So the guy's like, this isn't my aunt. So he goes to first the overseer of the region, and then the overseer of the region hears how eloquent he is and reports it to the overall ruler, and just so they can write down the deep thought of how he's talking about justice and what justice is and the injustice that's been done to him. There's basically a whole treatise on Ma'at. And because of, the depth of this, they never answer him until the very last time, where they rectify the wrong that was done to him, where the headman who swindled him out of his things, they give the man who was a peasant all of that man's possessions and titles and so forth and so on. And, the other guy is out of a job, basically. So eventually Ma'at was done. And this was, part of the deep thought of the role of the ruler, that the role of the ruler, the Nesu, is to make sure that Ma'at is done. And this is also, you find this in the text, such as the prophecy of Neferti, where it says that a ruler will come from the south, Amenid, the justified by name, and that his sword will cut down these Eurasians, his flame will burn these Eurasians who had already gotten into where we call Libya today, and eventually, and in doing those things, Ma'at would return to its seat while chaos is driven away, that's Isfet is driven away. So again, you find a very clear example that the entire role of the ruler is to preserve Ma'at and to make sure Ma'at is done. Right now, we don't have any strong ruler who can do that for us, so Isfet just runs rampant all over. So those were a few of the texts that have been done by the group Shemsu Bak. And we have members from all throughout, actually the world. We have a couple in Senegal, most notably the writer Aikwe Amar, who has the books The Healers, 2000 Seasons, Osiris Rising, Kemet in the House of Life, Resolutionaries, Eloquence of the Scribe, so forth and so on. Aisha Haruna Atta, who has Harmattan Rain and others. Jacques Delpechin, also a noted author. Yoporika Somé, he just received his PhD in Egyptology. Jallo Diop, Nike Benchi Enchil, he used to be the editor-in-chief of West African Magazine here. And I'm missing Sheikh Amala Blondin, also based in Senegal. So there are lots of different members. And what we do, matter of fact, we had a meeting earlier today. What we do, sometimes we just chit-chat. But what we do when we're on our job is that we do translations of text. And the text that we're working on now is the oldest surviving book in the history of the world, which is the Instructions of Ptah-Hotep. So we do the translations. And what's powerful is that we translate it into various African languages by tapping human resources from throughout the continent. So those texts are translated into Bambara, into Akan, Asante Tree, most recently, formerly Fanti, also translated into Hausa, into Fulani language, it's called Pular, into Wolof, into isiZulu, into Kikongo, into Kiswahili, now into Yoruba. That was my contribution, is now we're doing the translations into Yoruba, and then we're also doing translations into Eurasian languages that many African people speak, such as, of course, English, French, Portuguese, so forth and so on. But, of course, what makes me excited about it is doing the translations directly into the African languages.
Yeah, because people don't think that could be done.
Say it again?
I said it's true because people don't think it could be done.
Yeah, people are lazy and they don't do it. Yeah, matter of fact, we just had this Medu-Netra conference, which I was able to present that I mentioned yesterday, and then I sat in for just a couple minutes in between meetings today. And Dr. Raketi Amen was talking about one of these major, figures, authors who says it can't be translated, which is, the most ridiculous thing ever. If you say that, you might as well say, well, nobody can read English because I'm illiterate, and nobody can read French because I can't read it, whatever. And this is basically what's going on. But anyway, she was saying that this person, this noted figure, came to a class, he never did his homework and didn't understand anything, and then he left out saying it can't be done. It's like, okay, because I didn't put any effort into reading it. If I can't do it, nobody can do it.
Right.
And really, it's one of the, and because I'm in Ghana, I don't get into a lot of the discourses and insanity and isfet that goes on in America, so I know that that's a hot topic that people are having debates on right now. But I don't have
America
to be in the
always
midst
doing
of
something.
Yeah, it's always isfet going on there. We need to call that isfet land. But so I'm familiar that there's been some people who are trying to make money off of a debate, of a non-debate, because, those who are literate, we read entire stories. We read, and then, not only that, we teach other people how to read it, and then they, do that as well. So, these are some of the things that we are able to do, and, those types of conversations are what I would call distractions and diversions and so forth and so on. And really, there shouldn't be any time whatsoever devoted to discussions with people who are steeped in abject ignorance.
Mhm. For no reason.
Well, I wouldn't say for no reason. They want to make money, so they figure if they debate on a subject like it's like let's have a debate of whether or not I know how to read English. And then if you can get, a good 50, 100, or 1,000 people interested in hearing a debate over whether I know how to read English, well, then they're cleaning up. They are able to buy new Jordans or whatever it is that they're doing.
Mhm. Are you able to hear me clear enough?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. Because I'm thinking like a feedback is coming and you can't hear my the airwaves clear.
No, I'm not getting any feedback on my end. I can hear you very clearly.
Okay. So can we talk about the ruler of the nation-state system, the oldest nation-state system on the planet?
Very good. All right. So we could look at it in two ways. We can look at it in terms of the component parts that made it up, in which case we were looking at Tarseti, Abju, so forth and so on. But usually the credit is given to when those smaller, city-states became a much larger territorial state, which is the unification under Narmer. And again, we're looking at Kemet. Now, Kemet as a term, we find that going back into what the Eurasian scholars refer to as the Old Kingdom, what African scholars refer to as the First Golden Age. So you can find that in the pyramid text of Weni. You can find it in that of Pepi. That's where actually the very first mention of Kemet is, and it's actually in a line that says you stand in the forefront of those of the black land, meaning land of black people, as the Apis bull. And what's profound about that one is in later writings of Kemet or Kemtiu, you find in this one writing both elements, because you have Kem, which is the burnt piece of charcoal, and then you have the Tiu bird. Now, when you have the Tiu, it's usually letting you know plural humans. So you have the Kem, you have the Tiu, but then you have a determinative of a human settlement. So what you have is a combination of what later on became two separate things. When you want to talk about the people, you have usually a determinative of a man and a woman in plural strokes. When you want to talk about it as a land, then you just have the determinative of human settlement. But in this one, which is the earliest one that I could find, but again, there's this principle of historiography that the absence of evidence is not necessarily the evidence of absence. In other words, it doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that, based on the accessible resources, it just hasn't been found. But again, going back to the Old Kingdom. And what's profound about this is that this is the oldest corpus of spiritual texts on the entire planet Earth. So as matter of fact, I came across an article from a white so-called scholar who said, oh, yeah, you couldn't find Kemet anywhere until the so-called Middle Kingdom. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I just went through the pyramid text. I said, let me go to the oldest corpus of texts out there that's accessible. And within 2 minutes of reading, this guy say it wasn't there. Within 2 minutes, it's right there. And you can find it, carved into the pyramids, and you can go and read it yourself. Right. But again, it's right there. So sometimes these Eurasian scholars are, intentionally trying to, send us off on dummy missions or just lie. Other times they're just incompetent and lazy, and they're not trying to look for it. So if the earliest thing that they find is the Middle Kingdom, then they'll just run with it.
Yes. So they can just give us their version, and we'll read it and go for it. We'll never check before they did their research. We'll never go before that. We just take what they give us.
Right.
And you said 2 minutes into answering his question. Like, what was his response?
No, I was saying that I read an article by a white scholar named Ogden Golet, and in the article it said that the first time Kemet was mentioned was in what they call the Middle Kingdom.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went to the oldest corpus of texts available, which is the pyramid text, and within 2 minutes of me starting to just look for it, there it was. Again, in this text talking about Pepi, saying that you stand at the forefront of those of the black land as the Apis bull. And, that's the translation. They say those of the black land. The best translation is just you stand at the forefront of the black people, because it has the Q for plural human beings. Then it has human settlement.
Okay.
But, of course, Eurasians hate that translation. They don't even like to say the word Kemet, because as soon as you say the word Kemet, then people say, what does that mean? Then they find out it means black people, land of black people, and then it opens up a can of worms. So they prefer Egypt, which is coming from Hut Ka Ptah, which is the temple of the Ka, of the creation divinity Ptah.
See?
Are you able to hear me well?
Yes, we hear you good. It's good.
Okay. Yeah, so
and even,
that's that, but...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
But I was saying, going back to the very first nation state, this is Kemet, and what you had was these contestations between Narmer, between Ka, you had the so-called Scorpion King, and what the contestation was basically over who would rule. So you had, this ruler and his son, this ruler and his son. Eventually, Narmer was able to take this up, and you find it actually in what's called the Narmer Palette. And I got a chance to go to Kemet and actually see this and photograph it. And it shows on one side Narmer wearing the crown of Upper Kemet. On the other side, it shows him wearing the crown of Lower Kemet. And it shows him smiting the enemy and bringing together the two lands, which is another way that Kemet was referred to as Tawi, the two lands. But again, this is the very first nation state. And there's a good book called African Philosophy, the Pharaonic Period. And in it, it gives so many precedents. It's a bit more advanced, people who are just getting into research. A good introductory text is Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. And again, it goes into, the very first occurrences of so much as it was done by the black people. And when I say Kemet, I mean black people. When I say black people, I mean Kemet. These are synonyms.
Yes. I know what you mean. So Amen Ra, because every time we pray, we say Amen Ra, or Amen, or Amin, or Ama. Where does the root of that word, where does it come from? because a lot of religions do
Right.
it.
Very good. So when we're talking about right? Yeah, so it's clear. So when we're talking about Amen, we're talking about the major creator divinity out of ancient Kemet, which really rose to prominence around the same time that Waset rose to prominence, as this was one of the major divinities of Waset. So when we're talking about Amen, you can actually go to Waset. That's what today they refer to as Luxor. You can go to the temple known as Ipet Sut, which is the most select of places. And at that temple, it was the largest spiritual complex in the history of the entire planet Earth. And, it's been encroached upon by neighborhoods, by surrounding areas, but it's still, monumental and a sight to behold even to this day. But yeah, this was a major complex. And it's interesting. So in earlier creation stories, you had creation stories at Ilnu, which is what they call Heliopolis, Chimnu, which is what they call Hermopolis. You have the Shabaka stone, and these are just different views of the creation story. And in one of the creation stories, Amen and Amenet, as the male and female divinities, are listed among these eight initial divinities. Now, in Waset, Amen was revered as the hidden one. And the idea is that inside of any other divinity or anything else you can imagine, Amen is hidden inside of there. So when we're talking about Amen, this is what we hear in the name Tutankhamen. This is what we hear in the name Amenhotep. This is what we hear in the name Amennacht, what we hear in the name Amenemhet, and so forth and so on. So we're talking about Amen is in the front. That's Amenemhet. We're talking about Tutankhamen. We're talking about the living image of Amen. We're talking about Amenhotep. Amen is at peace. So again, when we're talking about Amen, Amen was often depicted as a ram-headed divinity, usually with a solar disk on his forehead. And it's interesting, if you ever read a book called Conversations with Ogo Temeli, he describes the same thing in terms of a ram that you can find in the swamps that has this shining calabash on its forehead, is giving a description of exactly what Amen is. And if you go to the Dogon word for the creator, they refer to the creator as Ama. If you come to Akan, to the Chi language here in Ghana, someone who's born on the creator's day, you can respond to them saying Ya Amen, again the same Amen there, that the day is called Memeneda, that the female born on the day is the same as the name of the creator among the Dogon is Ama. So again, you find it, and Ama is just an abbreviation of the longer Ameminiwa. So again, this is what it's dealing with. Now, what's also profound, if you look at the temple of Dendera, which these Eurasians dynamited this out of the ceiling of the temple, but it actually shows an early depiction of what we have come to know as a zodiac. And it has a good lecture to listen to is by Dr. Charles S. Finch, where he deals with the celestial wheel of heaven. And what he goes into is these great ages. And when we're talking about ages, we're talking about this is a time where the equinoxes and the solstice they're happening, and the sun is rising with a particular constellation in the background. In the background, as to say, let's say around 3 and 4 in the morning, if you look to the east, you'll see this constellation on the horizon. But when the sun rises, it rises. And of course, you're not seeing the constellation, but it's always happening with a particular constellation in the background prior to the rising of the sun. So at the time that Amen, who again was represented by the ram, at the time that Amen was most prominent and Waset was at its height, that's the same time that we were in what was called the age of the ram. You understand? That's what, in Greek terms, people refer to as Aries. I'll give you that term, just so you can understand what's going on. So, again, this is the idea of as above, so below. In other words, if the ram constellation is what's going on in the celestial heavens, then by the same token, the seat of the ram-headed divinity will be the one that has the most political power, the most spiritual power, the most spiritual influence, and so forth and so on. And that's exactly what we saw. Right now, we're in the age of what was referred to as Menat, the nurse, also known as Hapi, the water bringer, and that's what we refer to now as, and that's the one that we're coming into, which is what people refer to as the age of Aquarius, right? So before that, this is when they talk about the age of Pisces, that's the age of Intiu, the fish. And again, you find in the age of the fish, there's a lot of fish symbolism, especially with Christianity. You'll see this fish on the back of cars. You hear talking about fishermen feeding all these people with fish and so forth and so on in biblical texts. Basically, they're exploiting this idea of fish-based religion, fish-based so forth and so on. Now we're coming into the age of the water bringer, and it's also interesting, this correlation between what's going on in the skies and what's going on Earth. Right now, there's always talk about climate change. There's always talk about waters rising. I was looking at an article not too long ago, maybe about a month or two ago. It was talking about a piece of Antarctica, a huge, I don't even know if piece is the right word, a huge piece of Antarctica, an iceberg the size of Rhode Island is breaking off. And when it breaks off, it's going to eventually drift into the ocean and melt, and it will raise sea levels throughout the entire world. Now, when we talk about, the expulsion of Isfet and the restoration of Ma'at, basically what we're looking at is all these port cities, all these places that were built on the enslavement of our ancestors. All those places are going to be underwater, whether we're talking about New York, whether we're talking about Charleston, whether we're talking about Manchester, whether we're talking about Rio de Janeiro,
Miami, Florida,
all these places. Miami, Florida, you name them, all these port cities are going to be underwater. So again, this is a direct parallel that what's going on the earth is what's going on in the skies. And these were things that, ancestors tapped into. We can even go back before the age of the ram, where we're looking at the age of the bull. And at the time of the age of the bull, you had all the bull symbolism, talking about the Apis bull, just as we were talking about, referring to the text of Pepi and his pyramid, which was actually called the Mer. That's what it was referred to in Medu Neter. And you have a prominence of Asar, who was oftentimes depicted as the bull, and also Ptah, who was often depicted as this bull. So at the time that the bull constellation moves out of that position, that's where we came to the ram constellation. And what went on the earth actually paralleled what was going on in the skies, because the places where the bull was propitiated, the centers of Asar, those ones started to go down, and at the same time Waset rose to prominence, along with this reverence for the ram. You understand? And even you can go before the age of the bull to look at the age of the twins. That's what we refer to as Gemini. And with that one, again, this is where you had two lands, where you had Upper Kemet and Lower Kemet. They hadn't yet been united by Narmer. So again, what was going on the earth was paralleling what was going on in the sky. You had the separation of the two lands.
Yes.
So again, the two lands were united at the end of that age. So the twins now became, this bull. And you had in all these pyramid texts, this referring to, just as the example I gave, you have these rulers referring to themselves as a strong bull. You have Narmer himself depicted. This is the first ruler of Kemet. You have him depicted on the Narmer palette as a bull. And at the top of the Narmer palette, you have these bovines. So again, at that point in time, we were much more in alignment with the cosmos, and a lot of these things were very much intentional. So when we're in the age of the bull, let's do everything bullish. If we're in the age of the ram, let's do everything ramish. If we're in the age of the fish, you understand? So this is what we were on. Right. So all of that is coming from Amen. Amen is, symbolized in the skies as this ram constellation, what we now refer to as Aries. But on the ground, if you go to the temple of Amen, what they refer to as Karnak or Ipet Sut in the language of ancient Kemet, you'll see all these ram-headed sphinxes, right, Hur
Yes,
and
I saw
Akhet.
that.
Right, so you'll see them lined up, and all of them are representing Amen. You'll see Amen, depicted as a man jet black, or you'll see him depicted
Yes.
as a ram with a solar disc. So, this is exactly what's going on. If you go to the museum in Wasset, they have an Ashtrakan from this victory relief of Jehuti Mes, who they refer to as Tutmos III or Tutmosis III. And you see Jehuti Mes looking very much like me, like just your average brother. And then on the other side, it has Amen, and Amen is depicted as the blackest of the black, like blacker than every black person you ever seen put together. That's how Amen is depicted. So this is, what we're talking about when we're talking about Amen, the hidden one.
So Amen is basically honored during the winter solstice as well, December 25th. So where does that cross in at with the pagan holiday being on the 25th, and then the Christians say Jesus was born on the 25th? It's like so many different festivals going on. You already know one had to be plagued from another, because we know Jesus couldn't have been born on December 25th. But yet, that's what's happening every year. People spending millions of dollars. Black people at that. Our economics, we don't even have that for ourselves, but we put in like 1-point-something million a year on Christmas because we think Jesus was born on this day.
Yeah, this is interesting.
They don't even know about the winter solstice. That is like, what? What is that? It's Jesus born on that day. And then when you say he wasn't born on that day, they say, well, it doesn't matter what day he was born. I still give thanks that he died for my sins.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, this is one of the things which is
ridiculous.
Yeah, this is one of the things which is really one of the challenges that we're dealing with, which is, if you go online, you do a search for a video of winter solstice Karnak. That's what they call the temple Ipetsut. You'll see a picture of all these people there before the dawn, and what they're doing is they're waiting for the sun to rise on the winter solstice, because what happens is the sun rises in between these huge pylons, these huge columns, and when the sun rises, it rises and it shines directly into the Jesser Jesseru, the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctuary there at the temple of Ipetsut. And what it would have done before, it was sacked, is that it would light up the figure of Amen, right, the sacred bark to Amen. And so everybody comes on a pilgrimage to see this except for black people. So if you look at the videos, you'll see all these Neanderthals who are there clapping and, doing whatever. And you don't find any black people there because we don't know anything about it. We're all looking under Christmas trees and whatever, so forth and so on. But what's profound about that, it's profound in and of itself, but think about the math and science that was required to make this huge monumental structure where each stone is a ton and more, and to lay all those blocks in such a way that it shines directly into this one single place to light up the statue of Amen. That's look at the calculation that went into that. You understand?
I think I saw that on Astra Crazy. I think Astra Crazy had a footage on that. Yes, you're right.
Right. So
Dr. Ben had something on that too. I saw that a few years ago.
And you can, it's not only footage, you can go there yourself any winter solstice and see it.
That's right.
And this is what's so profound about our spirituality being in alignment with the cosmos, is that, the Neanderthals, they can change books. They can decide, all right, let's keep these texts out and let's leave these texts in. Let's do this, let's do that. But we did ours based on celestial phenomenon, because that's one thing nobody can change. You cannot go and say, stars, you go over there, hide these stars, let's move the sun out of here. No. So anytime you can go there yourself and verify it. And that's one thing, when I started studying this, I would actually go, and I remember like December 21st, 22nd, I would look, you can actually do this right now, and now we have more advanced technology. You can look at Sky Map on your phone, you can look at Google Sky, whatever, And you can see, very clearly there's this constellation there in the background, and you'll see exactly where the sun is about to rise, and then you'll see it. You can actually stay up and look at it rise. And, just verify it with your own eyes. So none of this is, just close your eyes and believe it, otherwise you're going to burn forever. No, you can actually just look at this. You can look at it every single year and see what's going on.
So you say in living color.
Say it again?
You say we need to see it in living color.
Exactly. And matter of fact, speaking about color, this is one of the things because, all right, let's say some people grow up celebrating Christmas. I was lucky to be born into a family where we never, ever did that insanity. But let's say somebody is born into a family where they celebrate Christmas. Then they come to find out that Santa Claus is a lie and Jesus is a lie and all this other stuff is a lie. Now they say, all right, well, later for December 25th. I don't want to celebrate that no more. So now they got rid of it only to find out, there actually is something on December 25th. Now let's look at this again. So I grew up in a family where we never saluted the American flag, the red, white, and blue. We hate red, white, and blue, so forth and so on. But then when you go into the Holy of Holies, you look up at the ceiling there and you see all of these stars. And what are the color of those stars that you see inside of the inner sanctuary of Amen?
I saw it on Astro Crazy, red, white, and blue.
And I actually before I went there myself, I had a friend who went there, and he was like, yo, you go in there, you see red, white, and blue stars, like, get out of here. I went there, and I saw the same red, white, and blue stars. So it's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like, all right, there are these things that you realize were stolen from you.
Yeah.
You realize were stolen from you. So this red, white, and blue, we may think about.
But that's not to cut you off. But that's not to say we need to pledge allegiance to this red, white, and blue flag. But we just know where those colors came from. Because I don't want nobody listening thinking that then it's all right to pledge allegiance to the flag. Then since they saw it in Kemet first.
That's definitely not where we're going with this. Anytime you get a chance and you see that flag, feel free to spit on it, use any bodily fluids on it, flush it, burn it, do whatever you want to do. I was lucky to be in a family where we never, ever, 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 from birth to death, we never stood up for the flag. We never sang the Pledge of Allegiance. We never celebrated any Eurasian horror days. So, yeah, that's definitely not the end result. We want people to go, oh, well, good, now let me salute the flag. No, that's not what we're dealing with here.
No.
But just to, let people know that when we're talking about red, white, and blue, those colors were in existence before there was anything called America. America has been in existence for just over 200 years, which is like one intermediate period of Kemet. We sometimes we think like how things are is how they. Yeah, that's baby years. That's like a sneeze. You understand? So sometimes we look at the way things are as though that's how they've always been or how they'll always be. But again, this is like just 200 or so years. Like the Hyksos we've been trying to get them out for like 200 years. So that's nothing.
About that time length, yes.
Right. Yeah, so please, any listeners who got the urge to go out and go and salute the flag, slap yourself real quick, wake yourself out of the stupor. No, that's not what we're coming with.
Right, because you see what the NFL and the NBA is doing, right?
Say that again?
You see what the NFL and the NBA is doing, right? Because the players don't want to pledge allegiance to the flag.
Yeah, I see them kneeling. I see them, doing these things. And I'm like, okay, kneel, sit down, turn your back, get out, But, there are bigger contradictions. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to mention. There are bigger contradictions than just that, because as long as you are, even just in Cave Beatsville, which is whatever, or Neanderthal land, as long as you're there, you're giving benefit to your enemies. We're financing our enemies. So this is what we were talking about before. Even if you go and eat at a restaurant, the tax that you pay is going to build a prison. So we say we don't like the prison industrial complex, but we finance that prison. Just the black people. This is before we were even talking about the non-Africans. Just the black people built the prison just from living. Not even saying, all right, extravagant, whatever. just from everyday life, that you're part of this thing. And this is why, when I talk about repatriation, that every single African who repatriates, it's like the equivalent of robbing the U.S. National Treasury of like $5 million, $10 million. Because all the money that you would have been spending on mortgage, on food, on health, on shelter, on everything that you can spend money on, instead of spending that in financing your enemy, you can do that in a place where you're financing yourself and helping to build up Africa so that Africa could be a world power. And, if the police pull over the Chinese, they ain't trying to shoot the Chinese like that because the Chinese got nuclear weapons. They ain't trying to, do that to whoever, North Koreans. Right. They ain't trying to do that to Israel. They ain't trying, because they see that, all right, these folks got back. But they do that to African people because they say you have no back. Africa isn't a world power. Therefore, Africans don't have to be respected anywhere in the world. Nor will we be respected anywhere in the world until Africa is a world power. So that's where I'm located. That's the reason why, among others, I'm located the place where I'm located, because I understand that Africa has to be a world power. And if we want it to be that, we have to do that by putting our money where our mouths are, which means, all right, maybe you ain't going down the road to Walmart, whenever you want to. But, that's hardly a reason why, you should not repatriate. Most people really just get used to ill-gotten gains, meaning that we know that the U.S. was built on genocide and enslavement, but it's like, all right, you got a cousin who goes and robs people. He's robbing people, but he gives you like $20 of hush money every time he comes back. And you're like, all right, as long as you keep hitting me off with that $20 and give me some joins, it's no problem. And that's essentially the situation of black people in the U.S., that, America is going to Eastern Congo and stealing columbium and tantalite, but feel like as long as I get the new iPhone, who cares? As long, my people can be dying by the millions. But as long as you hit me off with some of the blood money, I don't got nothing to say. Just keep doing that.
Just give me my piece of the pie.
Contradiction. Exactly. And what was very interesting is when Barack Obama got elected, that was the same time that I repatriated, because I was like, there goes a revolution. But several people who you may have thought were conscious or whatever term we want to use for it, that a lot of those folks just, they were really just disgruntled integrationists, because as soon as they saw a black president, they just hopped right back up into America's arms. They were like, yeah, we built the country.
Went right back to sleep. Yeah, they went back to sleep. So, they ain't getting nobody off. They went to sleep.
I'm telling you, some people who, matter of fact, we have a Bibi Tumikasa, one of our teachers who was an instructor of a Bibi Tumikasa, we had to shut off his RSS feed because every single day was like extended love poem to the new overseer on the plantation. And there's a proverb in Yoruba that goes, Nibati ake wanu igbo okoninu gi sokwe ewo ekure loje okoninu wa. And it translates to, when the axe entered the forest, one of the trees said, look, the handle is one of us. I'll come again.
Right.
When the axe entered the forest, one of the trees said, look, the handle is one of us. So that's how I saw the new
made of wood.
Right.
The handle's made of wood. So that's how I saw the coming of, the new overseer on the plantation. And I was like, it would be the exact equivalent of saying, look, there's finally a half-black overseer. The mulatto son of the woman who was raped is now the overseer. Right. And act like we're not going to get whipped anymore. No, it's about to really come down on your behind now.
That's right.
And it did.
And it sure did. We got copious examples of that. So some of us were not fooled from the beginning. I repatriated in 2008. I was like, all right, I'm out. Call it a day.
And that's the best thing you could have did for yourself. And I'm
proud
for
myself and my family.
Peace and love to you. Yes, and your family too, exactly. Just more love and prosperity is coming your way.
Children here. As a matter of fact, my son, who's my second born, was born on Ghana's Independence Day, which is 6 March. So, we were like, hey, we got good aim.
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
so
everything
these
is
are some of the things that... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, everything is just going in a place where I see people trying to wake up. Like you said, you left. You was like, nope, I'm out of here. You know, I don't want to say it like everybody fell asleep, but 90% went right back to sleep.
Yep. Yeah.
Because he was black. Only because he's black. And he had married a black woman and had black children. That's where they got caught up at. They didn't realize that the politics is still the politics.
Yeah, Chancellor Williams warned us about this miscegenation effect in the destruction of black civilization, and basically letting us know this isn't a new thing that started with Barack Obama. This is going back into antiquity, into ancient times, of using, the mixed offspring, because a lot of them come out confused. I'll put it like a friend of mine from college said, he said, if your mama white, you ain't right. Because the thing is, when all of us are fighting for black people,
that's funny.
In the back of your head, it may be, oh, well, we got to make sure that my white mama is cool, or we got to make sure that my white daddy is cool. Y'all can do all the black stuff you want to, but at the end of the day, and this is oftentimes what we see, but it goes even beyond that to there are what I call all types of vectors of compromise. One of the ways that you can make people who compromise and are compromising is what we just explained through the biogenetic effect. So now when we're all trying to do what's right for black people, now this person can't do what's right for black people because they're worried about their white mother. That's one. But another one is through finance. So they can say, if you're getting paid, if you get foundation grants or whatever, that's another vector of compromise. So one, they compromise us with biogenetic material. Another way is they compromise us through finance, through employment. Oh, I can't speak about this because, I might lose my job from the NFL. I may become a free agent or whatever, and I may not get hired back to an NFL team. So that's another, vector of compromise. And then other people, there's a proverb in Yoruba again, they say, Enito jinsi kotoko ara yoku lobon. And it translates to somebody who falls into a pit teaches everybody else wisdom, which is to say everybody else looks at you and they say, well, that's not going to be me. Which is the whole thing of making an example out of somebody, which is what they would do on the plantation. They get the one who's the most, they'll pick the one who is the most revolutionary and then just make an example out of him or her. And then everybody else is like, hey, well, guess what? I guess we're just going to be quiet and, let the new overseer, Mr. Obama, do whatever he wants to do on behalf of his white master. So that's another vector of compromise. Another one is, we mentioned finance, we mentioned employment, we mentioned biogenetic, and, some is through, and we can look at all these as an analogy of if you have a white parent, so if your white daddy is giving you money, or if you have a religious white daddy in the form of a white Jesus, or if you pray to a rock in the desert 5 times a day. So that's another way to get you compromised, because now you can't fight for black people because you always got in the back of your head, or what does my imaginary white daddy in the sky think about this? So in short, all of this is to say every single thing that these Eurasians ever gave us was to perpetuate their own existence, for them to survive. So nobody gives birth to a child and say, oh, I hope my child comes back and beats me upside the head. So whether that child is in the form of Christianity, whether that child is in the form of Marxism or socialism or capitalism, all the isms, none of them are better than any others. And the person who put it best was Dr. Khalid, the late Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, where he says, any time that he went to a capitalist country, it was white capitalists on the top, black capitalists on the bottom. He went to a socialist country, as white socialists on top, black socialists on the bottom. He went to a communist country, white communists on top, black communists on the bottom. We can talk about Cuba too, if people want to go there. Anytime he went to a Muslim country, white Muslims on top, black Muslims on the bottom. He went to a Christian country, white Christians on top. That anywhere there's white-black dynamic existed, you have that.
Yes.
So nobody, to me, is talking about revolution in any way, shape, or form. Whether you're talking about shifting the cash around, nobody cares what class Kwame Nkrumah was when he was overthrown in the coup, or Thomas Sankara, or Patrice Lumumba. This is not about class. They say your black behind is about to be out. You understand? So none of these things, whether you're talking about shifting money and, means of production, you're not talking about any revolution until you're talking about making a fundamental change from this white on top, black on the bottom. And again, we saw this in Cuba.
Right.
So even
that's
after
what America's about, black and white.
Right. And, the example I was given, still at the end of the day, you have a minority white Cubans, Fidel and Che and whoever on top, Raul and whoever on top over the whole black population. So what kind of revolution is that? It's just taking out one white slave master and replacing it with another white slave master. So, there has to be a fundamental change in that white on top, black on the bottom before you're actually talking about any type of revolution whatsoever.
That's right. And then that would mean that black people need to unite, because the unity is what's going to make us strong. Like, we could be strong, but if we're not unified, then that strength is just idle strength. You know what I'm trying to say? So the unity has to be there in order for the strength to even be in existence.
Yeah, and this is one of the main things, is that when we're talking about unity, the main question has to be unity between who and who. And I'll give that always with the example of last year. Haiti applied to join the AU, and it was kept out. It was rejected.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
I read that article.
Morocco applied to join the AU.
I said that's a shame.
And Morocco was accepted. So, you have these two strains of Pan-Africanism. One, Pan-Africanism, where it means, let's unite with our Arabs, who are our very first imperialists and invaders, who are still on stolen land in North Africa. That's what they call continentalism. It's whoever happens to be on the continent, let's just unite with them. And then we have the real Pan-Africanism, which is the one that put it in the dictionary at the 1900 Pan-African Conference, where Haiti was mentioned by name. And in that one, they were talking about black people no matter where we're located. So, it's obvious through that move of the AU that this is a co-opted thing, because they're willing to let our Arab enemies into this organization, but they're keeping out the black people. So, when we're talking about unity, we have to be very circumspect, because
who does that?
That's what they are playing off on, is the open door policy that even using the term African opens up, because it's vague in the sense of you can say African and you could say, oh, I'm talking about Africans, but then somebody in North Africa will say, oh, that's me. And that's what the AU was dealing with. You got all these enemies of black people who are part of the African Union, because the term itself leaves itself open to that. You could even say Dutch Boers in South Africa, the apartheid Dutch Boers, that are continentalism, they're on the continent, let's just call them African. Matter of fact, when I went to undergrad at Morehouse College, and there was a white boy out of South Africa on a scholarship as a minority, saying, all right, I'm African American. Yep, that's at a so-called HBCU. So this is why the term Kemet is powerful, because Kemet refers not only to the land, but it also refers to black people. So you can't get it twisted.
Exactly.
So, as long as we're talking about, and this is one of the challenges of even using the English language, because as long as we're using the English language, we can say Africa in order to tie us to the landmass, or we can say black, which doesn't necessarily tie us to a landmass, but it at least excludes our enemies. But when you can say Kemet, you're talking about black people, but then you're also talking about the land of black people, which is what we're talking about. We're talking about Kemet, we're talking about the land of black people. So Once we understand that Kemet means the land of black people, then we can look at all of the lands that black people run, whether it's the Pacific Islands, the continent, whether it's Bahia, Brazil, whether it's the Caribbean islands, and we can look at all of that as modern Kemet. Then we can also look at occupied Kemet territory, and that's including North Africa, that we have. Kemet means land of black people. So if you are on the land of black people and you ain't black, guess what? You're an invader. And that means something has to be done to deal with you. And that's the type of clarity that we get when we're speaking African languages. And not only in Meduneche, in Chi, when I say Abibi Mine, it again translates to land of black people. It also translates to Africa. If I talk about the Bambara language, they say Farafina, and that's again land of black people. So it's referring to the land. It's also talking about the people whose land that is, meaning black people. If you look at Yoruba language, Ile Adulawa, again you're talking about land of black people. And even you can look at the Greek term Ethiopia. You're again talking about land of black people. You can say Bilad al-Sudan. You're talking about land of black people. Now, what the Eurasians try to do is say they just mean that the soil is black. But again, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because in Kemet, the people said that they were made on the potter's wheel by Khnum out of that black soil. So you're still dealing with black people according to the worldview of those black people. They say, we're made out of that black soil. So now what?
And she is Ethiopia's daughter.
Right.
If you want to put it like that,
Right, right. Yeah, so that's what we're dealing with.
You see, with Haiti, it's really disappointing because Haiti beat 3 world powers at the time: French, English, and the Spanish. Became the first black republic. Even Jamaica, with Bookman, had a connection with the revolution to overturn the French, the English, and the Spanish. And you mean to tell me the African Union don't see this as an African family?
Yeah. Right. This is what's profound about Haiti.
Which were a part of their oppression and their slavery, right up to right now, could be a part of it.
Right. This is what's profound about Haiti, and also what's profound about the scholarship of the late Baba Jedi Shamsu Jahuti, also known as Dr. Jacob Carruthers, is that he focused a lot of his scholarship on Haiti and on Kemet, because both of those served as models of black people coming together on the basis of us all being black and taking military action against our white Eurasian enemies. So, he had Irritated Genie to really focus on Haiti. Then he had Medu Neter to really focus on Kemet. And what he was doing was actually countering the work of Napoleon, because you see Napoleon invaded Kemet on the one hand, and he also invaded Haiti on the other hand. He got his butt whooped, but he invaded Haiti on the other hand. And there's a quote that you can actually read the original French, but he says what he's doing is not so much a consideration of economics, but to stop the forward march of the black race in the world. I'll say that again. He said that what he's doing is not so much a consideration of economics, because Haiti was known as the Pearl of the Antilles. It was more profitable and rich than all of the other colonies put together. But he said, that's not why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because of economic reasons. It's because these black folks are about to make the whole world Haiti. Then it ain't going to be no more pale white Eurasians in existence if the whole world is Haiti. Because in Haiti they said, coupe tête, brûle caille. Cut head, burn house.
Heads off.
Exactly. So that's,
and that's what they did. They didn't say it, they did it.
You mentioned Haiti defeating the French, the British, and the Spanish. This is the reason why the British were forced to abolish the enslavement of African people. 1, because of Haiti, 2, because of Jamaica. Now, the abolition of the so-called trade, they didn't abolish enslavement outright first. But within about 1 year of them getting their butts whooped by Haiti, it was a huge scandal. Over 10,000 British were killed. They were supposed to be this great military. They got their butts whooped by former enslaved Africans. So that's why they banned the importation of new enslaved Africans from the continent. Because think from a military perspective, every single shipload is a shipload of your enemy combatants. So that means every single time you bring in 2,000, that's 2,000 more who are about to whoop your behind, just like Haiti. So from a military standpoint, they said we got to stop reinforcing our enemy troops because we're the ones who are bringing the enemy soldiers over there. So that's why they stopped the trade, so-called, the bringing of new enslaved Africans before they stopped enslavement altogether, at least in the form it was now, because we know it still continues in the prison industrial complex and so forth and so on. But again, within 1 year of Haiti whooping that behind, that's where they said we have to stop importing. Then fast forward to Jamaica. the Samuel Sharp Rebellion, that's where they got their butts whooped again. And within 1
Yes.
week of them finally suppressing that rebellion, within 1 week, they put together a committee to end chattel enslavement as it existed in that form. So the white narrative is, oh, they started hearing violins, and out of the kindness of their white hearts, they decided to end chattel enslavement. No. They don't understand anything like morality, as the great Bobby Wright said. Whenever race is a variable, the psychopathic race personality, exactly. Anytime that's a variable, they are gone. They have no understanding of what's going on. But, again, this is the same point I gave in that talk. The Africans who emancipated themselves, that this is what they were dealing with. Within 1 week of them finally suppressing that rebellion, they said they got to come again. They got to call it imprisonment. They got to come up with a 13th Amendment. They got to come up with all these other things that they came up with subsequently, because if not, they would keep getting their butts whooped by these Africans.
Oh, yes. The Slayer was on in those times, for real.
Right.
We need that type of energy and those spirits here in this time. You know what I mean? Because they was well woke. Nobody was really sleeping because they were too busy slaying the dragon.
Yeah. And actually, I'm working on a book called The Ancient African Origins of Pan-Africanism to look at the Kemet side, because, for too long the discourse has been in attempting to talk to Eurasians about, they were black. They're really black. They know that. And, they know that. And even if they didn't know that, it's a waste of time to try to talk to them about that. Or on the other side, look at how great Kemet was. We built this, we built that. Look at how great. Let's pat ourselves on the back. And then at the end of the day, let's go back and work for IBM and Walmart and whatever else. What we need to go forward towards is looking at what examples can be gleaned from Kemet. And the main example is that before the founding of that nation state, you have black people who call themselves all kind of different names. Some people call themselves Tasseti. Others call themselves Abju. Other ones call themselves Men Nefer. They call themselves, Iunu, Chemnu, so forth and so on. As we Men Nefer was after the founding. But all these different names, when they decided to call this nation Kemet, what makes that so profound is that that's the very first concept of black consciousness. That they said, regardless of whatever you call yourself, all of those identities have to be subsumed under the fact that we're all black people. And there's this text called the Autobiography of Winnie. And to quote it, it says, when His Majesty took military action against the Eurasian sand dwellers, His Majesty made an army of all of Upper, Lower Kemet, from all the two sides of the house, from Kensejeru, from Erjet Nubians, from Wawat Nubians, from Ka'au Nubians, from Chimeland. Basically, every single kind of black person, we brought all of us together to take military action against these Eurasian sand dwellers. Now, the type of Pan-African, when I say Pan-African, it means black clarity that existed at that time that isn't there now because we're letting Morocco into the AU. Like, that's really the blueprint for any type of Pan-Africanism that's positive that we can be dealing with. And the blueprint was laid over 4,500 years ago in the very first military document of any significance in the history of the world, which is this Autobiography of Winnie. You understand? So the blueprint was laid out there in Kemet, and not only in that text, in the instructions to Mary Carré, in the Prophecy of Nefertiti, in Upuwer, and Sanhat that I mentioned before. In all of these texts, it talks about building the walls of the ruler to trample these Eurasian sand dwellers. You understand? That's in Sanhat. It's also in the Prophecy of Nefertiti. You can find in Ipuwer lamenting that these Eurasians have come in. You can find in historical documents when Yamos was able to expel the Hyksos, and Hatshepsut said that she raised up for the first time what the Hyksos had ruined, the Amu. You can read it in the Stela to Kamos. You can find everywhere we're talking about keep these Eurasians out of the land of black people. Because once you understand that this place means the land of black people, then you understand all of the foreign policy that they were always trying to extend the land of black people further into the South. They were always trying to bring more black people in. It only makes sense. Because why would you bring in white folk to the land of black people?
You could bring in your own. Yeah.
So, and
makes
that's
sense.
something that until you understand the meaning of the name that the people called their own nation, you'll never understand it. Because they'll be like, oh, they were always trying to extend in the South because of economic concerns. Well, that don't make no sense because they had economic concerns in Eurasia, and they never tried to extend into that. They were trying to get cedar wood from what we now know as Lebanon. They were trying to get,
say that.
Copper.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to get all these lapis lazuli from Sinai, so forth and so on. So they had all types of economic concerns in southwestern Eurasia, but we never, until the time of Yehudi Metz, we never tried to have any permanent occupation in southwestern Eurasia because that's not the land of black people. If you know your nation means land of black people, why in the world would you try to extend the land of black people into the land of white people? No. You always, and that's what you read on the boundary stela of Senwosret, Hatshepsut. So one says, I extended my boundary further than my father's, further south than my father's. Hatshepsut says, my boundary now extends all the way down to Punt, which is what we're now talking about, modern-day Ethiopia, Somalia area. So all of these people were trying to say, we're going to extend further and further and further into the land of black people. You understand? But you will never understand that if you are unwilling, rather, to deal with the name that the people called their own land. This means land of black people. Once you understand that, every single thing else makes sense. If you don't understand that, absolutely nothing makes sense.
And that makes sense, what you just said.
Right.
And that makes
so that's
sense.
the book. So that's the book, and that's why my students here are like, yeah, when are you getting done with the book? When are you getting done with the book? I actually plan on being done with it next year. The main thing is what I'm doing is very meticulous work because every single one of these texts that I'm mentioning to you, I'm actually translating it word for word, line by line, word for word to show it. And I'm actually doing it, showing the Medu Necha at the top line.
Thank you so much.
And then the word translation underneath, and then the figurative translation underneath that. So anybody who doesn't know how to read, it can actually be a workbook of some of the most major texts that you need to know how to read, period. And it's dealing with, the Kemet, the black consciousness of ancient Kemet. So the people who say, oh, you can't translate it just because they're trying to make $1 or $2 off of some bogus debates, they can actually read the same word that they can read that means dog in this text. In this other text, it's the exact same thing, and guess what? It still means dog. And then there's other text, it's the exact same thing, and it still means dog. So guess what? I guess we know how to translate it. So, we really can't humor some of these folks because they are just ridiculous, and they're intentionally ridiculous. They're pimping people off of these debates. They know whatever.
Right,
people are just... They know that people are just interested in some entertainment value. They're not serious. So like, all right, you want to be entertained? All right, just give me your money. The pastors are doing it, so just give me your money. Come listen to this bogus debate with no foundation, blah, blah, blah.
Bogus, David. And it's true. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it drains you. Like 5 minutes into it, I'm like going off. I turn the YouTube off. The Hebrews. Oh my goodness! The only Hebrew that I can give some time to is the mighty Hebrew because he is talking with some sort of facts when he's not always banging on he being a Hebrew. But the other ones, like 2 minutes into their dialogue, I can't even finish watching.
Right. Yeah, this is the thing about the Hebrew thing, and I actually want to do...
out the window with it. I'm talking about out the window. Out the window to the point where it make you want to cry. Because I'm on the outside looking in. If they only knew how they look. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, as I was saying, I actually did a presentation last week where I touched on this whole Israel thing. Because the very first time Israel, and basically it's what was Israel in relation to black people. And, several hundred people have been looking at it so far, some comments and whatever. but the very first time Israel was mentioned anywhere on the face of the entire planet Earth, it was mentioned as the enemies of black people. Within 70 years of that very first mention of Israel, right, and that's in the Merim-Patah Stela. Merim-Patah Stela. Yeah. And I actually took, when I went to Kambon, I actually took a picture because it's in the Egyptian Museum. You can actually go there and read that stela to this day, and it mentions Israel along with all of.
What happened?
Uh-oh. He's still there.
Yeah. Did he go on mute maybe by accident?
I'm on his end.
OBADELE, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. I don't know if your mic went on mute by an accident, but we can't hear you.
And his call dropped,
I guess he'll call again. Yeah.
He'll call
sometimes
back. Yeah.
Connection acting up. So we'll just, get some Gil Scott going until he calls back in.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen or Bullwinkle and Julia. The revolution will not give your mouth sex appeal. The revolution will not get rid of the nub. The revolution will not make you look 5 pounds thinner because the revolution will not be televised, brother. There will be no pictures of you and Willie Mae pushing that shopping cart down the block on the dead run or trying to slide that color TV into a stolen ambulance. NBC will not be able to predict the winner at 8:32 on report from 29 districts. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of pigs shooting down brothers on the instant replay. There will be no pictures of Whitney Young being run out of Harlem on a rail with a brand new process. There will be no slow motion or still life of Roy Wilkins strolling through Watts in a red, black, and green liberation jumpsuit that he has been saving for just the proper occasion. Green Acres, Beverly Hillbillies, and Hooterville Junction will no longer be so damn relevant, and women will not care if Dick finally got down with Jane on Search for Tomorrow, because black people will be in the street looking for a brighter day. The revolution will not be televised. There will be no highlights on the 11 o'clock news and no pictures of Harry R. women liberationists and Jackie Onassis blowing her nose. The theme song will not be written by Jim Webb or Francis Scott Key, nor sung by Glenn Campbell, Tom Jones, Johnny Cash, Engelbert Humperdinck, or The Rare Earth. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be right back after a message about a white tornado, white lightning, or white people. You will not have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
And he's back. All right, let me open this mic.
Yes, you're on again. We're on air
all right.
now.
So I'm back.
Yes, we hear you clear.
Okay. Yes. All right. Yeah, so the point I was just about to go into was, again, the very first mention of Israel is as the enemies of black people. And, again, we get an actual depiction of who these folks are. in the tomb of what you can look at as Ramesses III. Now, what Sekhemtu-Diop did is that he had a reproduction from Lepsius, Carl Lepsius, but there are actually photographs. I actually have a photograph from the inside of that tomb where you see the exact same thing, that the Amu, these Hyksos, are depicted as what we now refer to as these Eurasians, pale white Eurasians. And then in that same tomb, it shows the people of Kemet and the people of Nubia, the Nehesiu, as the exact same. You understand? So all of these people who are running around saying, oh, we are the Israel, we are the Hebrews, we're so forth and so on, they obviously have no idea what they're talking about. And these are probably the same people who say they can't translate Medu Neter, and what that does is it lets them off the hook for not having to read anything that the ancestors wrote down. Because if they did read anything that ancestors wrote down, they would have some very jarring things to actually come to terms with. So again, in that exact same text, it talks about Yanoam is made non-existent. Actually, I can actually pull it up so I can give you a direct quote from it. But, this is what we're dealing with. And this was a conclusion that was come to way back at the time of Manetho and at the time of Josephus Flavius. They were like, the Exodus we're talking about, that was when Yamos drove out these Hyksos. So even when we look at Yah, you hear them talking about Yah, Yahweh, Yah this, Yah that. They don't even understand that the one who drove the Hyksos out, that was part of his name, Yahmos. So Yah is the moon divinity, and Mos is the same Mos that we hear in Jehutimus and so forth, Yahmos and Ramoses, so forth and so on. It's talking about born of, one who is born of Yah. And Yah is not whatever they say it is. Yah is the divinity of the moon. You can actually go to the museum in Waset and you can see the Sahu, what they call the mummy of Yamos. So they went from Yamos, drove them out to say, oh, Moses led us out to Holy Land or whatever they say. Luckily, I was also not born into Christianity, so I'm not steeped into all of the, I don't know what to call it, fairy tales. But this is what we're dealing with when we're actually dealing with. And the subtitle of the talk I want to give is what was Israel in relation to black people, and the subtitle replacing fairy tales with historical documentation.
Right. And even my aunt in the justice system. Sorry, go ahead.
Real quick, I pulled it up. I want to give you the direct translation. The princes are prostrate, saying shalom. Not one of the 9 bows lifts its head. 9 bows meaning the traditional enemies like bow and arrow of Kemet. Chehanu is vanquished, Kati at peace, Canaan is captive with all woe, Ashkelon is conquered, Gezer seized, Yanoam made non-existent, Israel is wasted, bare of seed, Kor become a widow for Kemet. All who roam have been subdued by the king of Upper and Lower Kemet. Banare Meramun, son of Re, Merenptah, content with Ma'at, given life like rain, the sun every day. So, again, what's so profound, it gives a list of all the enemies of black people and all of the efforts that Merenptah in his stela gave in order to make sure that they had all been subdued. Of course, we know that, all of the things that they stole from Kemet, including the story of parting of waters, including the story, and that's in the Golden Lotus story in terms of the destruction of mankind by flood, in terms of Holy Trinity, so forth and so on. All of that is from the time that the Hyksos came in as invaders up until the time that they were driven out. So, this is, again, replacing the fairy tales. And again, if people are dealing with biblical anything, they're only dealing with fairy tales and replacing it with actual historical documentation carved into stone.
Right. And a lot of this is fairy tales in the Bible. You can't find grave sites. Where's Peter's grave site? Where's Paul? Where's John? Where's Mark?
Those sound like those sound like the names of little white boys who I went to elementary school with. I don't know where they at.
Right? Yeah, but I could go to the temple of Aset.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. You can actually find the bodies of all of these people who are mentioned in our own historical texts, but you can't do that with these imaginary white folks. So,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's the whole thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's like my aunt and the justice system.
Mhm.
That's not an English or Europe invention. The justice court system where they wearing that white foolish wig and call themselves dealing with truth, rights, and justice.
Right.
Those
Yeah,
systems
what's
are taken
interesting
from Ma'at or Seshat.
Right. Mhm. Yeah, what's interesting, I teach a course called Foundations of African Thought here at the University of Ghana, and the main text is a text by Chukwunyere Kamalu called Person, Divinity, and Nature. Anybody who has not read that text definitely needs to read it. And it talks about, this is in the Papyrus of Nesi Amsu, in the account of creation. It says, I laid a foundation in Ma'at, and I made every attribute. Now, when you look at the glyph, the tooth of Ma'at, it looks like a pedestal, a foundation upon which everything else was built. So when we're looking at the foundation of African thought, Ma'at is that foundation of African thought. Is more fundamental than everything else, because when you're saying Ma'at, you're saying one word that gives you connotations of truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, right? So all of those things mean the exact same thing. So if there needs to be justice done, for example, we've had over 200 million of our ancestors, killed, murdered, assassinated during what some people refer to as the Ma'afo, others refer to as the Mangamizi, others refer to as in Torreasi or Tuko. That means things are out of balance, right? So for things to be to be in balance, it means that there has to be justice done. It means that there has to be reciprocity. You understand? So if this was done to us, what would be the justice that can reciprocate what was done to us? So all of this, and this is one thing I see that the situation we're in is because we continue to spurn Ma'at. We say we want whatever, but by the laws of Ma'at, there has to be a rebalancing. There has to be justice done in order to get things back on track. But again, you were mentioning Ma'at, that even from the very creation story, it says, I laid a foundation in Ma'at, and I made every attribute, implying that Ma'at or Ma'at is a truth according to which the universe is organized. So it might appear that the notion of stability is also associated with Ma'at, and this is implicit in the symbol. The pedestal of Ptah is possibly symbolic of the land, the primeval anthill or throne on which Ptah emerges from the primeval water in the beginning. So again, this is the foundation, and this is actually how it's depicted as a pedestal, a foundation upon which all other things are built.
You see, and that even sounds like it makes sense, even for a new hearer, a new beginner that's just hearing this. That should even resonate.
Mm-hmm.
It should resonate.
Right.
It should resonate to the point where you'll say, well, let me go further research what this brother is saying, because I'm sure he's not just on these airwaves lying.
Right. Yeah,
and
I actually
giving me
prefer those
reference
type of
points
people,
and
because those are
names.
the ones who will actually do the research.
Right.
Yeah, so this is a thing. Once you know that you can read it, and again, this is the diversion that some of these, I don't know what they call it, street scholars, hip-hop scholars, pseudo-scholars, I don't even know what they're calling them anymore. But once you actually learn how to read it, you can actually just look at the thing, and you can see, wow, this is a pedestal. This is, in the text it says, I made a foundation in my eye, and I made every attribute. That's from creation. Then you can actually look at it, wow, that is the foundation. The word ma'at, what everybody's saying is the word ma'at, it looks exactly like the pedestal he's talking about. He made everything, in talking about Ptah. And again, in the different creation stories, where you have a male divinity, you also have a female divinity. So you have He, Hehet, you have Kek, Kekek, you have Amen, you have Amenet, You have Nun, you have Now Net. So you always have this idea of complementary opposites, because what we know as human beings is that to be a creator or the creator, to create life, it requires both masculine and feminine. Not masculine, that's not going to create no life. Not feminine and feminine, that's not going to create no life. If you want to be a creator or the creator, then guess what? It requires both masculine and feminine. So it seems so simple, but how is that not simple to people who have a religion where the divinity who is said to create everything is just a man? Now, if I send a man off into a room somewhere, a closet, and say, produce a baby, stay in there for 9 months and come out with a baby, he's going to have a hard time. If I do the same thing with a woman, go into a corner and make a baby, she's going to have a hard time. So what we know, if we want to know how creation works, again, the foundation is in my eye. If we want to know how creation worked in the beginning, then we have to understand how procreation works now, because these are mirror images of each other, that this is the divine order as it is now is how it was in the beginning, and vice versa.
Right. Yes, because it's the opposites that attract, the negative and positive charges. Even on your car battery, your car battery won't charge if that negative wire is not on all the way or the positive wire is not tuned in all the way. Your car ain't going to get no charge. You need both sparks to get that battery going, to turn your car on.
All right, and that's a good analogy.
So even,
Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'd rather you talk. I was just making a comment.
But along those same lines, like, this is one thing that's also very fundamental to African thought, is this idea of complementary opposites. So whereas Eurasian thought, it thrives on this idea of diametric opposites. Mama Marimba Ani talks about this in the book Yurugu, where the diametric opposites idea is that one thing has to be good and its opposite has to be bad, and they always have to be in conflict with each other. So in white thought, all right, here you go, white is good, black is bad. Blonde hair is good, black hair is bad, so forth. You know, we can go down the list, you know, if you know how to think like a white person. But that's the diametric opposites that's really endemic to white thought. But if you come now to African thought, it's the idea that masculine and feminine are complement each other, meaning they complete each other. This means without the other one, this one isn't whole. So again, this is the idea of complementary opposites. And it was another analogy along the lines of positive and negative that's given in the book Self-Healing Power and Therapy by Nganga Fukiao. He talked about if you have a magnet, all right, here, this side of the magnet is, red, this one is white. He said here's positive, here's negative. But if you cut this magnet, let's say you take a saw or whatever, you cut this magnet, you find that inside of that half that you were just calling positive, now that sliver that's left has both a positive here and a negative charge. So inside of the thing that you were calling positive is a negative. Now you do the same thing on the negative end. If you cut into it, you find that this whole side that you were calling all negative, well, inside of this thing that you were calling negative is a positive. You understand? So it can attract and repulse just like, the other side, when it was whole, what you were calling a positive charge. And he was basically using that as an illustration of this idea of complementary opposites, that within, this is that, within that is this. They both are necessary to complete the other one.
Truly. And negative doesn't necessarily mean bad. I'm glad you said that. The Europeans, they have their concept of what negative and positive is. But, the ancients know that you need both to coexist. So negative can't be too bad, and then the feminine is supposed to represent the negative and the masculine represents the positive. So you're going to say that the feminine is bad when we know that being feminine is not bad if you're a woman, We need the feminine to give life and give birth. Exactly.
You see
it? So
you need some feminine in your life. That sure ain't bad if you're a real man.
Thank you. If you're a real man, he's like, bring me that negative, please. Negative Stacy, negative Margaret.
So this is another analogy that you find throughout the African continent. Again, you can find it in Kemet. Is Ma'at is also represented as scales, right? with Ma'at, her head on the top, and then you see the feather being weighed against the heart. And in this is, again, this idea of balance. And again, Fukiao, who's out of the Congo, he would discuss this in terms of balance, that if something is too positive, it becomes negative. And let me give you, an example. Let's say, all right, eating is good. I think we can all say eating is good. But now let's say you just eat, and you eat and eat, and then you eat and eat and eat, and then you eat and eat, and then you end up with a heart attack. You understand? You overate. So you were doing something that we can all agree is positive, but you were doing it out of balance. But then you could say, okay, well, all right, well, that's overeating. So, let's go to the other side. Let's go to the negative side. Let's just not eat. So now we don't eat.
Right.
Then we don't
That's
eat and
not
don't
wise
eat. Then we
too
don't
much.
eat and don't eat. Then we don't eat. And then, all right, we die of starvation. You understand? So the idea with the balance, with the scales, is to find just that. Find the harmony, find the balance, find the order, find the reciprocity, find the truth, find the justice, right there at that balance of where it needs to be. Because if you eat and say that's positive, you do too much of that, now it becomes negative. If you do a thing that was negative, let's not eat. You do too much of that, all right, then that could also have deleterious effects. So, you don't want to do too much of either one. You want to strive for, this balance in terms of this conception of reality.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and even like
I hope it's clear.
Oh yeah, it's very clear. We hear you good. It's very clear. Good reception. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So anything else for me?
Yeah. Probably. Yep. Yeah, I always have questions. The book of coming forth by day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very good.
The book of coming forth by day.
Right. Yeah, the book of coming forth by day. Anytime, I don't like to start with the book of coming forth by day, although there are some profound things that you don't find in the earlier iterations of it. Because, all right, before the book of coming forth by day, you have what I refer to as the coffin text. And before the coffin text, you have what I refer to as the pyramid text. And the idea, and you find a shift in terms of the worldview of the people of Kemet. In the pyramid text, and it's not necessarily easy reading, it's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages worth of information. But in the pyramid text, it talks about the ruler going off to join the imperishable stars, right? These stars that don't die, those that are at the North Pole. Other stars you see, at certain times of the year, they appear to rise, they appear to set, they are born and they die. But we want the ruler to go off and join these imperishable stars under the rationale that, okay, we know the stars have an impact, celestial phenomena have an impact on our lives here on Earth, from the sun to the moon to whatever. So if we can send our ruler off to join those stars that never set, well, now, then the ruler can intercede on our behalf. So that's the reason for building pyramids. And again, it's given as this is the reason why we're doing it, that this Pepi will become an imperishable star. This Pepi will not die. This Pepi, it just like goes on and on and on with this. But eventually, people realized, because we were also, you had these people who were stargazers. They would look at the stars, and our Medu Neter teacher on Bibi to Mikasa actually has a book that just dropped on the same topic, dealing with the star watchers of ancient Kemet. And, we would look at the stars, and eventually it came to light that, these imperishable stars aren't changing. It's like, all right, we sent, and if you go to the so-called Great Pyramid of Khufu, you find this, they have now a museum of this solar boat, and the idea was that Khufu would eventually, in the afterlife, go on this boat and then sail off into the sky to join these imperishable stars. But what people realized after looking at the sky, after the death of this ruler and that ruler, they realized, the stars aren't changing. There's not a new star that's popped up that we're saying, oh, that's our ruler now, he's looking out for us. That's not happening. So what you have is a shift in worldview. And I look at the pyramid text and the building of pyramids as one of the world's first monumental large-scale science experiments because, again, the idea was that if the ruler can intervene on our behalf as one of these imperishable stars, then, so they had a hypothesis, and then eventually they realized that's not what's going on. So they scrapped that idea, basically, and it got to a point where, all of these texts that were previously to ensure a specific type of afterlife for just the ruler, now anyone who had the wherewithal in terms of money to be able to carve or, have a coffin made and painted, that all of those texts were now, well, not all, you had a selection of those texts that were now going to be painted inside of someone who, an aristocrat or bureaucrat's coffin. So these are now the coffin texts. And a lot of the content is similar. You have allusions and references to the battle between Heru and Seth. You have allusions to the death and resurrection of Asar. You have allusions to, Aset. So there you have the Holy Trinity, in full force, going all the way back to the pyramid text. So you find all this, again, reiterated in the coffin text with a few things that are different. You understand? One thing that I find to be profound that you find in the text is this idea that the afterworld is the opposite of the world we're in now. And you have different incantations, for lack of a better word, words of power, I could say, that are intended for you to be able to say so that you don't have to go around upside down when you're in the afterworld. Because if we walk right side up, well, in the afterworld, it's the opposite. We're alive here, they must be not alive there. We walk up right here, they may be upside down there. We eat food and defecate feces here, so therefore they must do the opposite. Just from the idea, it sounds weird, but just from the idea, picture you put fertilizer or compost or manure into the ground. Manure is what I'm looking for. You put manure into the ground, which is where you buried your ancestors. Your ancestors send up what? Food for you. So it's like what you put down into the abode of the ancestors, they send up food. You take in the food, and then you send down, the opposite, what comes out. So again, you find these, you get my point. But this is what's being said. So you have different chants that are said where you say, urine is my abomination, I will not drink it. Feces is my abomination, I will not drink feces. So you find these in these texts, and it basically talks about this deep thought, this idea that the afterlife is the opposite of what we do here. That's one. So now let's fast forward to the book of Coming Forth by Day. And this is where, we can look at the pyramid text as, for lack of a better term, representative democracy. Of course, long before anyone called Democritus existed. But the idea was that we'll send the ruler off as our representative to join these stars, just to make sure that, we're taken care of back here, right? But with the coffin text, now we're not delegating the ruler alone to do this. And we also have a change in perception. And this was one of my very first questions in terms of the African worldview. Where is the realm of the ancestors? Is it in the sky, like, for example, the Yoruba say? Is it underneath, where sometimes the Akam refer to it as Nsiado? Where is the realm of the ancestors? But when you look at these texts from Kemet, it gives this idea where you have a change and a shift of ideas from looking at the afterworld, from being in the sky, being among the stars, to now looking at the afterworld to where everybody has access to. Everybody is buried, so therefore everybody can have a coffin and can have these texts inscribed in their coffin. So you have a shift to what we could refer to as participatory democracy, right? So instead of sending the ruler as our representative, now all of us are going to the ground. Now we're not looking at the afterworld being in the sky. All of us can go underground. So now you have, a much more prominent understanding of the Duat, the underworld, where Asar is judging people, so forth and so on. It's not that that idea didn't exist previously, but because now we're looking at it as everybody's being buried, we all have coffins. So let's inscribe these texts in our coffins so that we can all have this afterlife. That's where you have more. Now the book of Coming Forth by Day is where it becomes even more, quote unquote, democratic, widespread. Everybody's doing it. Where anybody who can even have, a papyrus, have this text written, now anybody can cite the things and say the things that they need to say to make sure that they don't have to go upside down, to make sure that their heart doesn't testify against them falsely, to make sure that so-and-so and so-and-so doesn't happen, that they're able to recite the names of the door jamb in the Hall of Ma'at, the floor in the Hall of Ma'at, one who's, so forth and so on. You have all these different names you have to recite in the Hall of Ma'at, to make sure that Nimti, gets you across this river and so forth and so on. So now it's going from just the ruler has it to all the aristocrats and people who can afford these coffins have it to now anybody who can afford a piece of paper can have it. So this is what's going on. Now, what's profound about the book of Coming Forth by Day, you have certain texts where, for example, in the papyrus of Ani, you have one of the earliest attestations of what we refer to as monotheism. Now, most people, when they think of monotheism think of Akhenaten, right? Because what he pioneered is what we can refer to as exclusionary monotheism, which means only this divinity and nothing else can exist. Everybody else is banned. All the land that was for the temple to Amen is now reverting to the ruler, and so forth and so on. And that was really a reactionary political move because of the waning of the power of the ruler and the rising of the power of all of these different temples. Because people, would go to the temple to make sure that they're doing well. They would give donations there, so forth and so on. So it made the ruler a non-factor. So what Akhenaten did is say, all right, well, cool. All of y'all are banned. And the only way to get to the Aten is through me. So it was really, people refer to it as a spiritual or religious thing, which to some degree it was. But really it was a political power play to check the power of the Temple to Amen specifically, to even move the capital out of, Waset, where it had been, to Amarna and so forth and so on. So that's that. So again, you can look at him as founding the pioneer of exclusionary monotheism, which is a main type of monotheism that exists now, that you better be a Christian, otherwise you'll burn forever. And you better be a Muslim, otherwise we'll bomb you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
In the book
that's
of
exactly
Coming Forth by Day, right, so that's exclusionary monotheism. But in the book of Coming Forth by Day, it gives one of the very first attestations of monotheism in the sense of an inclusionary monotheism where it talks about Amen. Now remember, Amen means the hidden one, and it talks about Amen as you are the one and the only one who has no second. Now that is talking about, that's as, clear a statement as you can give. You are the one who exists alone, who has no second. And then also you have this idea of you are the one and only one, but whose arms are many. So it says, Amen is one and alone, none other existeth with him. You are the one and only one whose arms are many, the one, the only one who has no second. That's the quote. So what's so profound about that should be clear, because it's saying that inside of everything, Amen is hidden inside of there. So you can say, I've got the best divinity. Well, Amen is inside of your divinity too. All right, well, I'm great. Well, Amen is inside of you too. So it's something that you found. It's how we can say it's a solution to a theological problem, where way back in the pyramid text you have what's referred to as the so-called cannibal hymn, and they call it that because you have the ruler saying that he will devour all of these other divinities. Yeah, go ahead.
Before you go into that, there's a caller on the switchboard, and I want to they may want to ask you a question, so I want to catch them before their line drop or they hang up. Okay, I see a private number 111. Yes, caller, your line is open. 111.
Well, we'll just leave the line.
Okay. Well, the mic is open if you want to say anything. Okay, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, you can finish, my brother.
Okay. All right, so Yeah, again, in this text, it's talking about the one who has no second. So this is very profound. Now, I was mentioning the so-called cannibal hymn, that what they were trying to get to is the one who is supreme over all. And how can you get to my divinity is supreme, my divinity is whatever. So the solution that they had in the so-called pyramid text was to say, well, this ruler will devour all of the other divinities, and in doing so would get all of their powers by ingesting all of them. Now that was a bit shocking, and it was something that was discarded. That idea of devouring all the other divinities was discarded. But this one was something that was very pervasive, and it was long-standing, this idea of Amen just already existing inside of everything else. You understand? So this is what's alluded to in the book of Coming Forth by Day. And you could say it's an innovation because you don't find that exact same line in the pyramid text. It's something that is, basically a solution to a theological problem of how can you say that Amen is so powerful? How can you say Amen is this, Amen is that? Well, you just say that Amen is this latent force that exists in everything, and that everything that exists is basically shorthand for saying Amen.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's, again, why you can find Amen throughout the entire continent, the words for the Supreme Being having Amen in them, all throughout the continent.
And you see, this is just like food to my soul, The educational box is just getting filled. And that's how it's supposed to be, expanding your mind and ever learning, because, if we don't know just these basic things you just said, we're going to stay in this stagnant condition, and the religion has that hold on us to keep us that way. That's all they need is to get in a religion, and then they don't have no room for none of this you just said. So you coming on the air tonight, that's just a blessing in itself, because you have, high-level learners listening, low-level learners listening, and all levels could get something out of this, because you don't know, everybody don't know everything. So we listening to you, we're learning things that we never knew, and you're giving us resources to go back and refer to. And that's what it's all about. And go ahead.
We got to look at the primary sources. That's what it's all about, is going to the primary sources. And this is, the thing, until we're dealing with the primary sources, you're just dealing with somebody's word for it. So for me, anytime I'm having a conversation with somebody about any of these topics, I'm like, go read the pyramid text, go read the whatever, go read this. And this is, again, to come back to that same topic, that's really a dead topic, beating a dead horse. But if you'll say, oh, well, you can't read it, well, what they're doing is just saying, well, that means I don't have to read what my ancestors wrote. And this is what's so profound about this quote by Baba Jedi Shemsu Jahuti, where he says, African champions must break the chain that links African ideas to European ones and listen to the voice of the ancestors without European interpreters. I'll come again. African champions must break the chain that links African ideas to European ones and listen to the voice of the ancestors without European interpreters. I have that as my signature, so I send an email or whatever on a Bibi Tumikasa, because it's so profound. Because think about just listening to what your ancestors said. Now, when you have people who don't want to listen to your ancestors say, oh, nobody can know what my ancestors said, so let me just say whatever I want to say. No, you can know what your ancestors say if you just choose to read what they wrote down, what they carved into stone, or even, what they passed down orally. There's this text by Laman, which is one of these missionaries who would go into Congo and record different things. He has a dictionary and so forth and so on. But the profound thing is that he records the people of Congo before they got to Congo. And they say that they used to be at a place called Kayinga, Kayinga, Kayinga. They said they used to be at Kayinga until Kayinga started to become a desert. And when Kayinga started to become a desert, they said, let's go. And he gave it like as a direct quote, like we remember, they said, let's go. Now, they said, let's go, and then they came to this great wall of the forest, They decided to go into that forest, and they kept going until eventually they got to Nzadi. That's what they call the Congo River. And some settled, to the south of it, some settled to the north of it. And that's what we come to know as, the foundation of the Congo civilization. Later on in Banza, Congo, and what we now know as Angola, so forth and so on. But let's look at this. This is documenting a time when the Sahara was not yet a desert. Now, you got to go back thousands and thousands and thousands of years to, at the very least, 5,600 years ago, to the last time that what we now know as a desert used to be lush. And I give that as a date because there was a documentary and a scientific article as well referring to the black mummy of the Green Sahara, and it was radiocarbon dated to 5,600 years ago. They call him Juan Mahujaj, and it was a 2-year-old boy who was mummified, and it's the very first case of mummification on the entire African continent before even Kemet started to do mummification, and it was found in what we now know as a desert region of what we now refer to as Libya, in the Akakus Mountains. And what it documents is the very first eviscerated mummy, meaning that they intentionally removed the intestines and replaced it with leaves and herbs to make sure the body wouldn't decay. Then they wrapped they put him into a fetal position. That's again intentionality. And then they wrapped him with leaves. That's again intentionality. You don't just make a mistake and do any of these things. And then they wrapped him in an antelope skin. And then they buried him. And he stayed preserved for 5,600 years. And this is at a region where no one could survive at this, now it's basically a desert region. By the time that he was alive, it was a lush place. And you can go even older than this. The oldest fossils of modern-day humans date to 300,000 years ago. Now, previously, the oldest found fossils were 195,000 years ago in the Omo River Valley. That was Omo 1 and Omo 2. Just within this past year, you had fossils that were discovered in what we now know as Morocco. Again, this speaks to the Green Sahara because every 4,100 years, the Earth tilts on an axis between 22 degrees and about 24.5 degrees. And when this happens, it causes shifts in, the climate, such that what was a desert in the Sahara becomes lush and green, so forth, and then it goes back to desert, then it becomes lush and green. So within these cycles, that to find modern humans dating back to 300,000 years ago, that gives about 7 cycles of the Sahara becoming green to becoming a desert to becoming green to becoming a desert, and so forth and so on, and black people going in and out and in and out. And in some of their rock art in the caves in the Sahara, you have depictions of crocodiles, right? Now, crocodiles don't live in the desert.
Right, sure don't. They're like swampland.
Exactly. You have depictions of giraffes and hippopotami and elephants and all these things. So, again, this speaks to this Green Sahara. So what I'm driving at... That is dry land right now.
Animals used to habitat animals used to habitat places that were dry land right now today. They used to be flush and green, is what you're telling us.
Exactly. Now, in the oral tradition of the people of Congo, they say that they used to be at a place called Kainga, but then when it started to become a desert, that's where they traveled up south into the Congo. Now, once Google Maps came out, I read that and I decided to do a search for Kainga, and lo and behold, right near what used to be the shore of Lake Chad, now Lake Chad has become much smaller, but what used to be the extent of Lake Chad is a town called, guess what?
What?
Kainga. You can type it into Google Maps right now and see this place, which is now a desert, and it still has the exact same name that these people of the Congo have retained from, at the very least, 5,600 years ago. And it's still called Kainga.
So is that like in the Congo Basin?
Kainga is in Lake Chad. So if you look at Chad, this is like at the very edge of the Sahara Desert.
Okay, I see. Okay.
And
when you said
right,
when you said Congo, I was thinking Congo Basin.
Right. So they moved from that place because it started to become a desert into the Congo Basin. So they left this place that used to be lush once it became a desert because they were looking for a place where it could sustain life, a place that was lush and green and so forth and so on. So that's why they moved. So, we've been talking about things that we had, written down. But again, even in the oral tradition, you have something that has been passed down orally for over, at the very least, 5,600 years. And that's profound. So again, all this is just to say, once you have access to the words of your ancestors, it's empowering. But you can look at it like this. You had different game reserves in Africa where you had elephants on the rampage, right? So, you have different game reserves. I'm talking about like southeastern Africa, so places like Zimbabwe, South Africa. And you had a depopulation of elephants because of the ivory trade and other things. You had a depopulation of elephants where, all of the old elephants were wiped out. So now you had young elephants who were just left alone. Now these young elephants started running amok, right? They started just, what they would do is that they would tusk these rhinos, meaning that they would run at full speed and ram their tusks and stab these rhinos in the side, killing them. Because these are like, elephants. Now, this never happened when there were older elephants around, but when you have elephants who are not listening to the words of their ancestors as passed on to their elders, now you have these elephants running amok. These are the actual cases that happen. So they said this is a problem there, that you already have a dwindling rhino population, white rhinos, black rhinos, so forth and so on. So now you got elephants who are killing the rhinos. These rhinos are going to go extinct. So as a solution, what they decided to do is import in elderly elderly elephants. So they actually brought in elderly elephants, and the elephants cooled those young, those young
rhinos.
They cooled those elephants who were killing the rhinos down. So these young elephants that were running out of control, once the elder elephants came in, they checked that whole situation. The rhino population rebounded and so forth and so on. And the analogy I'm making is that's what's going on in the so-called conscious community, especially when people say, oh, you can't read anything from our ancestors, you can't translate it, you can't. What they're essentially saying is that they want to keep doing what they're doing, which is having debate. And I'm giving that as an analogy of elephants just ramming into rhinos and killing them. They just want to have free license to do whatever they want to do, say whatever they want to say, diss each other and clap back on YouTube videos, start cussing people out and pretending you're on the phone with somebody and nobody's on the phone, and it rings while you pretending to be on the phone. All type of ridiculous insanity. That's what they're saying. Cussing people mother out. So what they're saying by saying, I don't want to listen to the words of my ancestors, is saying that I want to be like these out-of-control elephants. I don't want to listen to my elders. I don't want to listen to anybody. I just want to do what I'm doing. And that's not going to move the community of elephants forward. And it's not going to move the community of rhinos forward, whoever that is. It's not good for anybody. So what we have to do is, and that's why I like the works of a colleague that I have, Dr. Kambon Rashid. He just put on this Wahim Mesut Medu Neter Conference, the repetition of the birth of Medu Neter Conference in Chicago, because what he's doing is, and he has a book coming out on the works of Dr. Jacob Carruthers. And what he's doing is he's carrying on the work of a fallen soldier. There's this saying, the best way to honor a fallen warrior is to pick up the weapon and keep fighting with it, right? So that's what he's doing. He's giving honor to somebody who came forward in the struggle. He dealt with Haiti. He dealt with Kemet as the two best models of black people coming together to fight our white Eurasian enemies. Those are the two best models in the history of the entire
Haiti must
black
be
race.
there. For real.
Right. So
Black
that
the
work
first Black Republic.
Not only that it's the first Black Republic, it's that these are Black people who know who they are and are fighting their white Eurasian enemies.
Right.
That's what makes Kemet profound.
Mm-hmm.
That's more profound to me than building a pyramid. That's you can build a pyramid once you can do that. You can build temples in alignment with star systems when you do that. You can do industry and linen. You can do all these other things. But the most profound thing about Kemet is here are Black people who knew who they were and took all types of pains to keep these pale white Eurasians out. Once they stopped doing that at the time of Jehuti-Mes, who they called Thutmose III, that is the beginning of the destruction of Black civilization, just as Chancellor Williams said. You understand? Once they had that policy reversal, they started marrying these Eurasian princesses, so-called, in. Once they decided to start bringing these princes into the court from Eurasia, that's it. You are done. You are finished. You are a walking dead man. And that's what happened in Kemet. As soon as you reverse that policy, you had these walls of the ruler to keep them out. You let them come in. And interestingly enough, this happened about 3,000 years ago that Jehuti-Mes did this policy reversal. Now, this is right after the time of Hatshepsut. This is probably one of our greatest military minds in antiquity. But what he did wrong was to allow these Eurasians in. Now, one of the upshots of this is that this also led to the Khoisan people coming back into Africa through a reverse migration. So the Khoisan people, these are the people who speak with click languages, that it was traced back through genetic evidence that they had left out of Africa and didn't come back into Africa until around 3,000 years ago. And again, you have the history of Kemet intersecting with this genetic evidence that exactly around 3,000 years ago, this is where you had a reversal on policy, where you had Eurasians who were allowed to come in wholesale. You understand? So it's a convergence of all these different, pieces of evidence from archaeology, from texts, from genetic evidence, so forth and so on. But again, this is what we have to do. We have to look at the work of our ancestors. So that's what made Kemet profound, and what made Haiti profound is the exact same thing. You had all these Black people who realized, you know what, before you call yourself Fon, before you call yourself Congo, Mukongo, before you called yourself whatever, Bambuti, you called yourself Yoruba, you call yourself whatever you call yourself. But guess what? We are all Black and we have a common enemy. Let's unite around the fact that we're all Black and let's defeat this common enemy. And they did it. So not only that they had the idea, but that they were successful at doing it in Haiti, not only that they had the idea in Kemet. And basically, anytime you have Black people who are close to this pale white Eurasian enemy, this is what happens. That's even in the modern Pan-Africanism. You have all these Black people who were being lynched, raped, murdered, so forth and so on. And they said, you know what? Let's invent something called Pan-Africanism, which means bringing all Black people together in order to fight this common white, pale Eurasian enemy that we've been fighting for the past, at the very least, 5,000 years.
Yes, that's Pan-Africanism, to say the least. And I don't think people understand that to be that definition, but it is.
Right. Yeah, there is a move afoot, and I got colleagues right here at University of Ghana. There's a move afoot by so-called Marxists and socialists, and you name it, to hijack the term Pan-Africanism and refer it to all workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. You understand? So that means, regardless of the fact you're all Black, let's all sit down and hold hands and sing Kumbaya with our exact same first imperialists and enemies, these pale white Eurasians. And I say Eurasia because Eurasia is one landmass. To say Europe is a fiction, it's a figment of imagination, because when you look at the map, you will see that Eurasia is just one big landmass. So to act like, oh, the Germans are a problem, but the Arabs aren't a problem, is a fiction. It's a fool to the world at large, because we've been having the same issues with the Arabs Now the Chinese are here destroying the water bodies, doing mining here in Africa. The Indians are here bringing statues of Gandhi, who was a virulent racist, and so forth and so on. So none of these pale white Indo-Eurasian, Indo-Aryan Eurasians have our interests at heart. The only ally we have on the face of the planet Earth, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke used to say, is ourselves, is black people.
Righteous, truly. And Gandhi, you know the story with him in South Africa. He didn't even want to ride in the same cabin on the train with black people.
Yeah, I have quite a bit of research
I'm talking about
on
the South
Gandhi.
Africans.
I actually just wrote an article for a periodical in India about Gandhi. It was reported that, we should teach nonviolence in the schools based on Gandhi. And I had to write an article rejoinder rebutting that, because people have never read what Gandhi wrote. They saw a movie and said, he must be a good cat. This is the greatest con man of the 20th century, because he conned Nelson Mandela, and he conned Martin Luther King, he conned Kwame Nkrumah. So in his autobiography, he said, my heart was with the Zulus, but you can read the collected work of Gandhi, and at the time that the Bambata Rebellion broke out, he was begging the British for firearms to go and kill the Zulus. You understand? Now, that's called lying. He says, my heart was with the Zulus in his autobiography, but he repeatedly, time after time, wrote letters, wrote news articles begging for firearms to go and fight against the Zulus.
You see? Then, because they treated him well.
Say again?
They treated him well. So when the British and the Zulus is having a conflict, now he's jumping on the British side. He's forgetting that they treated him well. That's why his heart was with them, for him to make that type of comment. They had to treat him well for him to be able to say something good like that. Like he was received well. They didn't.
No. This is the point. For him to say his heart was with the Zulus, that is a lie. This means that deep down,
we saying the same thing. That is my point. He was lying.
Who are you saying treated him well? No one treated him well. That's the point I'm not getting what you're saying.
The Zulus. I was saying that if he said that his heart was with the Zulus, that's probably because the Zulus treated him well. They didn't treat him ill-mannered. So he didn't have nothing negative to say about them. But when war break out, when the conflict between the Zulus and the British break out or whatever, he jumps on who he thinks has the higher power side. And he forget all about where his heart was at. So you know he lying.
No. That's not what happened. He didn't have interactions with the Zulus other than when he tried to create segregated post office and telegraph offices in Durban. So in Durban, he said...
So how can he say his heart was with them? Was with him?
That's why I'm saying he's lying. His heart was not with them. It wasn't.
He never interacted with them. How would he know?
No, he did interact with them in terms of making sure that the Indians were not classed with Zulus. He said that these are native Kaffirs, that they are 1 degree removed from an animal, that they are beasts. You understand?
Wow.
He says, why Johannesburg... This is why you have to read the primary sources. Go and read what he wrote, because all of it's available in, 98, 99 volume series of PDFs. You can read every single thing that he said about the Zulus. So you don't have to come to any conclusions other than just the words that he wrote down. He said these people are 1 degree removed from an animal. I hope you're following.
Uh-huh.
He said these are heathen. Mm-hmm. These are savages. You understand? He said the British, he said that the British, those are his fellow colonists. This means he's including himself as a colonist. He's saying my fellow colonists, you understand? And he said that he and the British spring from the same common stock, which is called the Indo-Aryan. So the Indians are no less than their Anglo-Saxon brethren, you understand? This isn't that he switched ships when war broke out. He, from the very beginning, was against black people because you have to look at the Indian caste system. there are black people in India, and Gandhi comes from what's called the Baniya caste, right? So you have the Brahmin, which is the top caste. You have the Kshatriyas, which is underneath them. You have the Baniyas. Then you have the Shudras. He's one of the privileged castes. He's from a merchant caste, right? So he's among the Vaishyas, right? So Vaishya is the caste. He's the Baniya subcaste. They're the ones who do trading, merchant, so forth and so on. So he's coming from a place where they burn black people alive. These are the Dalits. These are the people who invented that civilization. But the Aryans came in and invaded. That's what he was saying when he's saying we're Indo-Aryans. We sprang from an Indo-Aryan common stock. So the same way that they were treating their indigenous black people in India, that's the same way he treated the Zulus once he got down to South Africa. You understand?
Yes.
So take the time. If you want a summary, there's a website called Gandhiism.org, Gandhiism.org, and it has a series of about 20, 30 of his most racist quotes. But again, the reason why he's lying is because before the war, he was speaking in quite disparaging terms against the black people and in quite glowing terms for the British, right? Once the war broke out, he was agitating and saying, give us firearms so we can go massacre these Zulus. You understand? And then after the war broke out, now during the war, later on in his autobiography, he said in 1906, during that rebellion, this first rebellion, he said, you know what? He had a life-changing epiphany. He started to get on brahmacharya, nonviolence, and so forth and so on, celibacy, so forth and so on. He said that that's what happened to him in 1906. However, you can read what he wrote in 1907 when there was another rebellion of the Zulus, and guess what he was writing at the time? He said, all Indians, go back to the war front. Those who went last time can go back again, go back and join the war front. What happened to his epiphany? What happened to his life-changing, vow of nonviolence that happened in 1906? He didn't know when he wrote later in 1927 in his autobiography that people would be able to go back and fact-check. He didn't know that people would go back and read these articles that he was writing at the time, that we were reading his diary. Now, in his autobiography in 1927, he said he only nursed the wounded Zulus, right? Again, he's lying because he didn't nurse only the wounded Zulus, because we can read his diary. In his diary, he talks about nursing Trooper Forder, who is not a Zulu, who is British. You understand?
Right.
So, again, the point of him lying is that in his autobiography, he tries to rewrite history as a pathological liar and say, oh, my heart was with the Zulus. No, it was not with the Zulus. You were trying to get guns to massacre the Zulus at the time. He says, oh, I only nursed the wounded Zulus. No, we got your field diary. And also in that field diary, he was dejected any time that they marched all day without getting a chance to fight the Kafirs, as he called them. You understand?
Yeah.
So all of this is there for us to read. But again, how many of us are reading primary sources?
Right.
We can't guess about this stuff
because they don't see anything wrong with Gandhi anyway, so they wouldn't even think to do that because they think he's a great person.
And even after they learn that he was a terrible person, they still don't do the research. So this happened when they brought this statue here to University of Ghana. I sent out about 52 of his most racist
How did
quotes.
that happen?
You got people who are like, oh, well, maybe he changed. Matter of fact, the head of the whole university wrote in an email back, well, maybe he changed later on in life. And I was like, this man has never read about... There's a book by Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, who was a contemporary of Gandhi, who was a Dalit himself, and he has a book called What Congress and Gandhi Have Done to the Untouchables. If you want to know from a contemporary of Gandhi who was a Dalit what he did to the Untouchables, that, among several things, he coerced them into giving up their constitutional rights because he threatened to fast unto the death, which means that if he died, at that time he was well-known, famous, if he died because of a fast due to Dalits. Now, the Dalits are killed on a daily basis in broad daylight without him dying. So what happened, he was coerced into signing what was called the Pune Pact, in which they had to give up the double vote And they also had to give up, the special reserve seats, the constitutional safeguards that were going to be built in. Otherwise, Gandhi was going to fast unto the death, and that would have led to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Dalits being massacred as retribution for the death of Gandhi. But again, the head of the university had never done any reading or research about it. He may have seen the movie about Gandhi, which was financed by the Indian government, who uses Gandhi as the face of hypocrisy, because they know Gandhi said that he was against violence, but he supported every major war in his lifetime, and he was rejected for the Nobel Peace Prize 5 times. So he supported the Boer War, the Second Boer War. He supported the Bambata Rebellion, and he actually went to the war front in that one. He supported World War I. He said, let's fight for the British, you understand? And use that. We need military training. He said home rule without military training is useless. And he said that he would teach force himself if it meant that, he could get this done. That's him at World War I. And World War II, he was talking about Hitler. He said he knows that, now this is after Hitler had invaded France, right? 1940. He said that, Hitler isn't as bad as some people are making him out to be. Besides, he's winning his victories without much bloodshed. Now, he said this after the invasion of France, which led to 360,000 deaths and casualties. 360,000. So, his powers of perception not only starved to death, but literally bombed to death, bloody, you understand, at the war front, as they were able to circumvent the Maginot Line, right? So Gandhi's powers of perception about Hitler were no better than his ability to tell the truth, because, again, the people who've read anything from Gandhi, it's just been his autobiography, which is, he subtitled it, My Experiments with the Truth. My experiments with truth. Now, how do you experiment with truth? That's his way of saying, I'm about to lie.
That is not my article, okay? Where is my eye in his life?
And there's a book called Gandhi Under Cross-Examination, where it looks at this Peter Marisburg train incident, which was dramatized in the movie. And basically, it never happened, because the different accounts that he gave, first he didn't give any account of it until about 11 or more years after it happened. Now, this man documented if he sneezed, he would write it down. If he coughed, he would write it down. If anything happened to any Indian, he would write it down. But he didn't dream up that train incident until years after it, at the urging of this missionary called Doak, C.M. Doak, who wrote the first autobiography of him in South Africa, where he came into his office and said, are you ready to be a martyr? Which basically said, we're about to make up a whole bunch of stuff. Are you down? Yeah, I'm down. If it helps the cause, yeah, I'm down. So he invented this whole train incident, and in one version of it, he says, I was in the waiting room and somebody came in, but I didn't want to talk to him. In another version, I came in and there was already somebody sitting in there, and I was afraid of them. And then in another version, it's cold, and another version is light. It's like, not only is he a pathological liar, he's not good at lying, because he doesn't know that people will come back and check this stuff. In one version, he says,
like we talking right now. Mm-hmm.
In one version, he says of a coach ride on the same, narration of what happened to him on his way to Durban. In one version, he says on the coach ride, he was punched so hard that he fell down. He was boxed in the ears, boom, boom, boom. He lists all this other stuff. And in another version, he says, I was just hit on the ears. Now, in the version where he says that he was beaten so hard that he was bruised and was almost knocked down, later on in his narration, he doesn't mention any need for medical treatment. Now, these are the inconsistencies of a liar, right? He just goes on. He doesn't mention that anybody says, wow, you look like you got. Then not only does he talk about that in the coach incident, he says, and then I was beaten here and beaten there and beaten there on my way. So there are other things that he just doesn't want to go into details, but he was being... Now, if any of this was true, he would be like limping on the platform once he got there. Exactly. But he forgot that, I mentioned earlier that I got beat up. I also need to, work that into my lying narrative and say... So anyway, it just goes into all these lies Gandhi told.
Yeah.
And they call it Gandhi under cross-examination because if you look at the different versions of his lies, if he was on a witness stand, you would throw his testimony out. You would say there's no way. It was a big black man who was 7'2", like Shaquille O'Neal. And then the next time you come to sit on the witness stand, it was a white woman who was 4'2".
What a black guy!
What is it? What is it? Gandhi?
And the pit bull hit me on the leg. See, I have the scratches right here.
So yeah, and I started off this article with there exists an unfortunate saying that if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. Right? So apparently Gandhi was able to hide stuff from Nelson Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Martin Luther King just by rigorously documenting everything in his own writing. Because you don't have to make up anything about Gandhi. All you got to do is fight the mythical Gandhi with the real Gandhi. Just use nothing but his own words.
Yes, the truth. It's
right.
The truth.
Now, and I have an early day tomorrow, so I'm going to have to sign off. But I hope that this has been useful.
Oh, yes, very useful. We appreciate you so much. And peace and blessings and prosperity to you and your family and all your endeavors.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're going to link again because you're going to meet up with Excel Edge, I guess soon, one day. And, y'all discuss the tour and everything.
Right. Definitely. Sounds good.
Right, so she has your information. And I guess she'll be calling you momentarily.
Wonderful. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, so let's keep in touch, keep the link, and thank you so much. Love to you, heart of love all the time. Just sending you love and light. We need spirits like you on this planet. We just appreciate you and thank you so much. You're really moving in the light of the ancestors in a fleshical, Christly manner, and we respect you for that. And just words can't even explain. I'm so honored to have you on my radio show.
I appreciate it. The longer you move in the light, the blacker you get. And that was another one of the teachings from Kemet, because all these people who call themselves Ramisu and Ra this and Ra that, they're basically bragging about how black they are. The longer you stay in the sun, the blacker you get, the more Kemet you become. So I appreciate that. So you as well, keep it blacktastic, blacknificent, blackerific, black powerful, and spectacular.
Oh, yes, every time. I sure will. So, maybe we could have you come back on again next month if you have time.
Blacktastic. Let's make it happen.
That's right. It'll be blacktastic if you could come on next month. So we're definitely going to keep in touch and stuff. So I don't want to hold you up. I know you teach in class and then you 3 hours with us. I don't want to overexalt the matter. We got a lot to talk about because you have a YouTube showcase that it's like, okay, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about that. So I just appreciate you so much. And you have a blessed night.
Black blessings. And also, you mentioned that you were having issues with the app due to the phone, but there's also the website, which is online at bbtumikasa.com, so you can also access all the information. One thing, I never communicate with anybody on YouTube, and I'm not even on Facebook or WhatsApp or any of those things, because I'm like, we got to put our money where our mouth is, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to join the conversation, there are all types of conversations. Come to the Black website, BB2 Mikasa, Black Junction, Black Spot, any of those. And, I would love to interact with people. If you put a comment on YouTube, I will never, ever, ever respond. I'll see it, but I will never, ever, ever respond.
Never, ever, ever,
I
you said, David.
I just joined Black Junction.
Never ever? Never ever?
Not even in the afterlife ever?
not even in the afterlife. He was like, is he going to respond? He passed on. Is he going to respond now? Nope. Nope.
Okay, not even interstellar ever?
Nope. Not even if I go off and join the imperishable stars that never set, I still will not respond to no comment. Unless you post it on a black site. No more white social media, white anti-social media. We got to get with the black media. No excuses.
Right.
I let my Facebook go last month, so I'm failing you. And I'm slowly but surely diluting these things. And I'm glad that you told me about those other 3 black sites because that'll just replace the Facebook I let go and, the WhatsApp I'm getting ready to let go. So that was even, a blessing in disguise, David, because now we can do it on a black media.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got to live it. And the easiest place where we can live it is on the digital realm. Now we talk about we need to separate, we need to be self-sufficient, and we can't even do that with clicking a button. And you telling me you want to do that on the real physical plane? You can't even get off their digital plantation, and you telling me you're going to do that in real life? Nah, that don't fly. So, I really appreciate you doing that. I got rid of Facebook back in 2010, end of 2010, beginning of 2011. And the last post I made was Harriet Tubman didn't chill out on the plantation. I'm out. So very last presence that I have is the YouTube. Again, I don't socialize with anyone there. I use it to put content on a Bibi Tumikasa and on Black Junction and on Black Spot. So we upload the videos there and put it, there. But as soon as the alternative comes, we offer that one too. But yeah, this is we gotta live it. It's ain't about entertainment. We want to hear somebody who rah rah rah. Oh yeah, that's African. Now we go back and work for our Neanderthal enemies. We gotta live it, and that's the easiest, dimension to live it on is just the digital. Let's get that one. Then let's parlay that into the physical in other ways.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
All right, my sister and my brother over there.
Yes, have a blessed night. And bless up the family for us on Real Radio Talk. And anytime you want to come on the airwaves, just let us know. Your platform is here.
All right. Yeah.
Blacktastic. Awesome. And be sure to look up Kainga. Look up that map of Kainga. It's in Kingdom in the country of Chad. And you can find this thing that they were talking about over 5,000 years ago. That place still exists. And that's really profound. So, I'll close out with, again, those profound words from the late Dr. Jacob Carruthers. The African champions must break the chain that links African ideas to these Eurasian ones and listen to the voice of the ancestors without Eurasian interpreters. And then also a proverb in Kikongo, Makumbongi, Makatombola Wangazako, and it translates to matters of the community's political institution should not borrow foreign dialects to discuss the political matters or to educate its members. So we also have to be doing these conversations in African languages. It's way past time for us to talk about let's get free in English, let's get free in French, because the very fact of us doing that means that we're not trying to get free.
You're right. I like how you put that together.
No doubt. All right, my sister. So, y'all take care.
I know, right? Yes.
Signing off. This time for real.
Be blessed. I say. Peace and love.
African Liberation.